Well, hi there, I'm KK, and today I thought I'd take a fun approach to a little personal development and encouragement for you. You may know this, but there was a time where I spent a considerable amount of energy, effort, and investment as a competitive gymnast and cheerleader. And so I recently watched the Netflix series Cheer. There's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad. As I was watching it, I found some principles that can be applied to business, to life, to everything in between, and I thought it would help you to maybe find success off the mat, a little cheer analogy there, but also in life and with anything that you're really excited about professionally. So let's start with something fun. You can mat talk your way through almost anything that you're struggling with. This is true personally and professionally, and I've actually lived this so many times that although you know probably by now that I'm not a big fan of just focusing on lifestyle and mindset as your way of success, but I do think there's something to be said for how we think and what we do based on that. So mat talk makes a lot of sense when you think about how you act is based on how you think. The other thing I think about, in a team-based sport, which much of my cheer career was devoted to, is the concept of the hard work of the many versus the few. And look, I'm a big believer that personal success is available to anyone, and that professional success is available to anyone who's willing to do the work and has the great ideas and puts them to fruition. But to be honest, we need people at all levels. We need people who maybe aren't successful as entrepreneurs, who can support really great-minded founders and entrepreneurs, probably like yourself. And that there's also a need for people at the mid-level that can manage and kind of take care of the delegation needs that you have as an owner, as a manager, as a mentor. And then of course, we need these big free-thinking people who have these hairy, audacious goals, and they go after them and they put money and resource and time to them. But there's a place for everyone there. And so while I agree that there's place for everyone there, I don't think everyone gets to the same level of success. So whether you are desiring to have the path of the many or the path of the few, I think wherever you're willing to work towards is exactly where you're meant to be. And that brings me to the training process, right? Like, it's not easy to become competitive in these sports, like in general, but it's also really clear to me after revisiting that part of my life, which I have not thought about in, 20 years, 25 years, I think, is that champions train like champs. Like, they don't go out there and practice a crummy routine. They go out there with the best choreography, the best stunts, the best tumbling. They focus on kind of where they're uniquely excellent. Sound familiar? I talk about that all the time. And they really do put the effort out there on a consistent basis and on an ongoing basis. So if you watch the cheer documentary, you may have heard them talk about like full outs, right? Doing their routine, although it sounds really little if you've never done cheerleading or gymnastics, but 2 minutes and 15 seconds feels like a lifetime when you're moving and tumbling and being thrown in the air, all of which was part of my former life. And so I remember at the end of that 2 minutes and 15 seconds just feeling, winded or exhausted doesn't give it credit. And so one thing I do know, as a flyer, right, as a top girl, and also as someone who had some chops on the tumbling side, it's incredibly important to realize that that did not happen overnight. It didn't even happen over a couple of years. Like, champions are made because they train and put the effort in to be champions. They go full out every day, every practice, every competition, and that's the difference between those that don't. So the team that goes full out often and hits their routine is more likely to be the team that wins at competition. It's just that simple. And so that's a great kind of recognition to life and the things that you're doing now, where it may feel like you can skate by or get by with the minimal. But I want to encourage you today that if there's something you really want, be a champion now, so that when you are actually enjoying the success of that, it's consistent. It's similar to what you've built as your way of doing things. Because champions don't become champions overnight or by accident. They train like champions every single day. The next thing I want to talk about is maybe how you get opportunities. This is true again in personal or in your professional life, and certainly on the cheer mat. Getting the opportunity to take kind of anything that gets thrown at you and make it into something great. I actually think it's what makes a great entrepreneur. I'll be honest, I was never thinking about being an entrepreneur at the time that I was being tossed in the air, and even when I was tumbling on the mat. But when I think about kind of what makes me strong on the business side, it definitely has a lot to do with being able to pivot and move with wherever the market takes me, being knowledgeable in a lot of areas, but being an expert in a very specific few that are very meaningful for most. And so I guess that's very synchronous to the life that I lived when I was much younger and had a lot less issues and less grace, let's be honest. But I do think that that's a sign of a champion in and of itself, is that you look for opportunities, you step up when you're asked, but you also put yourself in the position to take every opportunity, to make the opportunities that aren't given to you, and to think big about the excitement around that. Not just to stay small and do one thing, but to turn it into an entire routine, and to take that routine to nationals, and to go, I think, further than the average person does, even in that stage of their lives. I think there's probably statistics around this that I actually don't know. Would you believe there's some things I don't know about how many young kids kind of get into gymnastics or get into cheerleading and just never take that career anywhere. And it's really easy to, by the way, especially if you don't meet the prototype of what is considered successful. So as usual, I'm always a bit off the beaten path in every aspect of my life. And this was definitely true in gymnastics and cheerleading. I mean, I was way too tall to be a flyer, way too light to do anything else. And then I had strong tumbling skills, but also got very nervous at times. I got kind of the twisties, I think is what they call it now, where you get freaked out about the crazy, amazing things that you're doing. And I realize now that really thinking about kind of how I do things and being very intentional and strategic now as a business coach, as an expert, it really did start at that stage of my life, as young as I was and as unaware of who I was going to be. It's that principledness, it's that grit that allows me to be great today and that has trained me to be this good every single day. Okay, other things that I think are really comparable, thinking ahead of your competition. You know, this is one of those things where I think the many and the few are so different, right? So most people think about their neighbor, the business that's comparable to them, the person has a job or a career path similar, and we really don't put a lot of emphasis on like what's in our locus of control. So like most times you can't control your competition, you can't control your neighbor, you can't control, I mean, honestly, sometimes even the people who work for you. But what can you control? There was a really unique part of season 2 in cheer where the coach actually went the extra mile to have her team practice on a stage instead of just a mat. And that may seem really small and insignificant if you've never cheered or done gymnastics, but the difference between a mat that you practice on maybe in your gym or where you have competition prep is completely different in every way from the one that's on stage in front of everyone with all the lights and the extra springs. And I actually remember being part of a team where actually it was really troubling for us. Really, honestly, we didn't know how we would react physically to things that were out of our control. And so mentally, that really can mess you up if you're not prepared, or if you don't have a coach or a team that's willing to do the extra work to be prepared. And look, that is entirely similar to your business life and your professional life. So when you're thinking ahead, when you're kind of analyzing competition and opportunity, I really do recommend you look at it that way. What can I do with what I have now to prepare me to be the very best, that prepares me for being exemplary and being unrelentless about those things? It may cost extra money, it may make a lot of effort, you may need to get more stakeholders involved, but it is entirely worth it, whether it's applicable to your personal or your professional life. So this is where I want to encourage you. Like if you're thinking through something, any aspect of your life or business that you want to be like the best at, here's an idea. You got to leave it all on the mat. And so that's something I've learned at a very young age. Every single day is an opportunity to give your very best, whether you're practicing, you're doing a full out in pre-competition mode, or you're literally out there with the world watching you, with people expecting a certain outcome from you.